I guess the loop didn't throw in, but that's all good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of Late Night with Chefs. Truffle Boy here reporting for duty. And tonight we have an amazing guest, Chef Mike Stites. How are you doing tonight, Chef?
Hey man, I'm doing all right. Just enjoying the day off. Hanging out around the house, getting some stuff you got to get done when you got the time to do it. Oh.
Yeah, there's never enough days off, right? Get all that stuff done that goes undone. Well, I'm really excited to bring you on the pod. I'm super excited to learn how you got into the world of food, what got the ball rolling, and what's your story, what's your background. So if you can, share that with our guests and our viewers.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I grew up. My mom cooked dinner for our family, every night of the week, just about. We very rarely went out. So I kind of always grew up watching her and eating her food, and I could feed myself better than most 14-year-olds if I had to, as far as the things that I could cook. I started off in restaurants when I was 15 years old in the front of house, waiting tables at a Denny's actually. And so I did that for about 7 years. When I got out, got into sales and had a little stint in music. Music's always a big passion of mine. And then I started selling cars, and I was making a bunch of money, and I was what you, I guess, would call successful. And but I was just miserable. And during that time, I watched two things on television. That was either Top Chef or something on the Food Network, or sports. Like that was pretty much all I did. So I found myself using cooking as like a therapeutic uh, thing for me. If I had a bad day at work, or my girlfriend's mad at me, or something's going wrong, whatever, I could just get in the kitchen and start cooking, and like all of that other stuff would just melt away. Right? It was just like, at that point, it was just me and the food, and it was like really therapeutic and like almost meditative for me. And so I was always like, man, I don't want to sell cars anymore, but I don't know if I want to, go into cooking, because I'm afraid that like I would lose that aspect of it. And I talked to enough people that are like, no, man, if it's your passion, it's something that you'll absolutely, succeed in. And so I decided to take the plunge, and I left a $150,000 a year job to start culinary school at Le Cordon Bleu in Dallas and make $12 an hour for Wolfgang Puck. So it's kind of where it all
Passion,
started.
right? Things will make you
Right,
do.
right, yeah. Um, but I immediately, realized how much I really did love the craft, and I really dedicated myself in culinary school. So a lot of, people are like, oh, you don't need culinary school. You don't get enough out of culinary school. I feel like I got everything out of culinary school that I put into it. And so I like really dedicated myself to learning what they were trying to teach us, and trying to be the best that I could be in school, and then translate that over to what I did in the kitchen. So I think having that on the job training, while also having that like reinforced foundation and background of culinary school, like really helped me out, because it wasn't just like learning this like thing in theory. It's like I was going every day and being able to like put it into practice.
And I love that you said that, because I truly agree with that. It is what you put into it is like what you get out, because a lot of kids go, and they want to party and do this and that. And I think, you went at a later time where you already got that out of your system. So you were able to really like focus in and get as much out of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I uprooted my life from my hometown of Corpus Christi. I was at the time living in a very nice house on the island with the water in my backyard, and 5-minute walk to the beach. And, to give all of that up and just kind of plunge yourself into the unknown. Like I said, I've worked in restaurants forever, but I was always in the front of house. And so like taking that dive into the back of house, and really just committing yourself to wanting to do something, and trying to accomplish your goals is, I don't know, I found myself very like motivated and dedicated to what I was trying to do. And I think a lot of it has to do that it did come to me so much later. It's 28 years old when I started that journey. So like you said, I'd already been through a lot of the partying days, and gone to college, and done all of that. So I found it a lot easier to focus on like trying to better myself, and really put myself into my work.
And by saying you got as much out of it as you put in, like was there, were you doing things outside that was still tied into culinary school, like whether it's doing extracurricular school activities, or you know were you connecting to your mentors, or how did that play a role in getting as much out of it for, every young culinarian who's in culinary school right now, trying to squeeze as much out of that school as possible?
I mean, so going to Le Cordon Bleu, obviously it's not around anymore, but they did give you access to a lot of great extracurriculars. Like I competed on the ACF team, the American Culinary Foundation. They do like these competitions where you're a team of 5 and you don't know who's going to do what, but somebody's got to tourne like 20 potatoes like perfectly, and then the next person has to break down so many chickens perfectly, and so you just like go in and you practice, and you literally like it's after school and you go stand there in a room for 2.5 hours and tourne potatoes to try to like get it perfect so you can do it the fastest, because it's like a relay race, right? So little things like that. They also provided volunteer opportunities for me. I volunteered at Savor Dallas. It's one of the biggest little food festivals here in Dallas, and that allowed me access to a lot of chefs. It's kind of what that volunteer job at Savor Dallas is what introduced me to the guys at Wolfgang. I met Chef Jacob and Chef Tony and Chef Chris. They were all loading their stuff in for this festival, and I was the ones like helping them load in. And so I, kind of got that interaction with them and just got to kind of meet and network. And then it was the next event that I volunteered at. It was the Guns and Hoses. There were 6 police officers that were shot down in Dallas. And so Guns and Hoses is the name of the foundation. And they put on this big food festival thing. And all the proceeds went to the families of the officers that had been shot. And so being there, John Tsar put that on like in the hotel that the original knife is in. And so I was like, okay, cool. This would be a cool opportunity to try to network with him. It's his event. But I wound up running into Chef Jacob and Chef Tony again. And I had just happened because, you always got to be prepared, right? I had a resume and a cover letter addressed to Chef Jacob on me. And so when I started talking to Chef Tony, if they needed any help or whatever, and he was like, yeah, you got a resume? I was like, yeah, I've got a cover letter too with Chef Jacob's name on it. He was like, no way. I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, come here. And he walked me right up to Chef Jacob, and Chef Jacob was like, he was kind of blown away. He was like, really? You got this here? And I was like, yeah, Chef, I want to work there. He was like, all right, show up Saturday. You got a stage. I was like, all right, cool. So
That's how you get it done. That's how you get your foot
right
in the door.
Right. And that's like I said, so a lot of the extracurricular, it's constantly, what can I do to improve my craft? Because like even if all I learned was like how they load things in or load things out or keep things warm, or what I mean, to like do certain events like this, even if I didn't get to touch any of the food, like I was still learning something about the craft that I'm trying to get into, and just always be learning, always be growing. It's I got the bookcase back here, and most of these books are Evan's. Yeah.
I mean, that's
But
still a beautiful collection of books.
yeah, man, it's they're great for teaching you things, inspiring new ideas and dishes, and it's all the guys we look up to. They put their thoughts and their techniques and everything into a book. It's pretty cool to open them up and learn something.
Yeah, it's such a wide range of knowledge and so many different experiences and little twists on recipes that you've seen or done before, and really taking it to another level, which is awesome.
Right.
As a tool that didn't exist before. Everybody that goes to culinary school goes through the Escoffier and the five mother sauces and all those techniques, but they really break it down to a whole nother level.
Right. And that's one of the things, I just got the French Laundry cookbook for Christmas. And one of my favorite things about that book is just like beyond the recipes, like if there wasn't a single recipe in there, just all the little boxes of just like great information about, large pot blanching and how to get the perfect crispy skin on a fish. You know what I mean? Like it's like little information like that I think helps build us and turn us into better chefs,
Right.
Little,
Raising
just
the standards.
Right.
So with all the cookbooks that you have behind you, what would be the 3 pinnacle books that you're like, these are my go-to? This is my style of food. This is what I love to cook.
Man, so that's a tough one. There's a cookbook back here. It's called Hot, Sour, Salty, Sweet. It's a cookbook that's like a conglomeration of all Southeast Asian flavors. It's got stuff from Cambodia and Laos and Vietnam, Thailand, and so and they're not in any specific order. You just kind of they're more grouped together by like proteins and vegetables and stuff like that, and then it just gives you multiple dishes from all over the region. So I really like referencing that when I'm trying to spark ideas or come up with flavor profiles or try a new technique, something I haven't done before. But beyond that, like I said, I that's probably most for flavor profiles. But like I said, I like a lot of the information you get out of the books. So I love 11 Madison Park. The back has an index of every like gel, crumble, foam, like, and it gives you every ratio you'd ever need. And so at that point, like once you got the ratio and you understand how to make that happen, then the flavors are plug and play. You just, start turning different gels into whatever kind of flavor you want.
And I want to stop right there and ask you, when did the thoughts of ratios become a thing in your culinary life? Because there's a moment where you connect all these dots, right? All these sauces. When you learn and you get that experience, right? You start seeing all the similarities, and you start looking at it, in ratios. And I would say it took a while for me to really be like, oh, it's just a ratio. Like, you make any vinaigrette, any sauce using different flavors, and getting a different result, different flavor profile, but still having that technique in there.
Right. I'd say I learned that at Stephen Piles when I was at Flora Street Cafe. After I left Wolfgang and graduated, I did one semester in going for my bachelor's degree and decided I don't care anything about Texas government or any of this other stuff. I just want to be back in the kitchen. So I went to work for Stephen Piles, and it was there that I really learned the importance of like salt acid balance and how ratios and stuff like that work. And I attribute a lot of it to my mentor, my best friend, Chef Evan. What's up, buddy? He really taught me that to make it less complicated than I was trying to make it, and just understand that there are ratios and things that work, and then all you're doing is, like I said, plug and play. So I give a lot of the credit to him. That dude taught me a lot about what I do. So
yeah, we can't wait to get him on the pod likewise, and pick his brain and check out his experiences. But he's definitely a strong character and definitely a team leader, and has a way of making things exciting and new and cool. And definitely his flavor combinations, I'm still baffled by, but they work and they're amazing.
Like pork and shellfish, right?
Yeah, I mean, those things are, me and Yassel were never really exposed to those things, so
right.
It's a new concept. And sometimes, we stray away from that as chefs, dabbling in other cuisines. But the more we do it, the more, we look at things as a ratio and understand that it works and why it works.
Right.
So
yeah, and that.
Go for it. Yeah, finish. Let's finish that thought and segue into something else.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, that's the beautiful thing about cooking, is that, I mean, basically anything and everything done that has, with the exception of very rare few, right? But most things that have been done in cooking have already been done. Like, you're not going to invent something new, really. All you're going to give us is your interpretation of something that has already been done in some way, or figure out a way to manipulate that to come up with something new. And so it's important to know those basics and know, what the rules are before you can start to bend them and break them. I think that's a really important lesson that a lot of young cooks need to learn, is that, you can't just hack your way through life. You have to understand, okay, why is this the way we do it to achieve this product, in order to understand how to manipulate that and achieve a similar product or something, different, or take it in a different direction, while still respecting the process and how you're supposed to get there.
For sure. I completely agree with that thought. You got to build that foundation, those techniques, got to get all those down, get good at the basics, and then you can really expand and sky's the limit from there.
Right.
So taking us through the journey. Okay, you're at Stephen Piles now. How's that like, compared to Wolfgang Puck in terms of, kitchen culture, corporate culture, and then what is the scene like? Because, you guys have been popping everywhere. Every food magazine for the past 3 years, has, chefs from Texas blowing up. What did that do to, drive you guys and like let me feel the scene. I want to feel the vibe.
Right. Well, being at Wolfgang Puck, it was in 560 Sky Restaurant at Reunion Tower. So it's in that big ball of lights on the Dallas skyline. And so I was like, oh man, it's Wolfgang Puck and he's known everywhere. And they put out some really good food, right? But they're doing, 450 covers on a Saturday night. So at some level, volume at some level always sacrifices quality, like to some degree, right? There's only you can only be so attentive to a million things versus being able to pay very very close attention to 100 things, right? So the food was great, and I loved my time there. I learned a lot from my sous chefs, from Chef Tony and Chef Chris, uh, Chef Kenny as well. Working alongside Chef Fuji, who's probably one of the best sushi masters in the world. Chef Fuji's amazing. Guy does, the sushi. He caters the sushi for the Oscars every year for their after party. Guy is definitely an amazing chef. But then like getting to Stephen Piles, it was like stepping into another level. Stephen Piles was a little bit smaller restaurant, did less volume, but we were a la carte as well as had a tasting menu, right? So that was a big difference from there to there. Other than Chef Fuji's omakase for the sushi, that was the only real like tasting menu they had there. So like getting into that side of things and how tasting menus run and how they fire and all of that kind of stuff, and just watching the kitchen work where the others, everything that I did came off of my station, and now it's a kitchen that's working in unison where it's like, hey, you need to fire me these fried onion rings for my pork jowl dish over here on the grill. And the orchestration of how like it all happens and comes up together, and then all walks out of the window at the same time, and the servers would circle the table and do classic French service, and all the food drops at the same time. And it was just like, man, I'm really at the next level. Like it's kind of mind blowing for me. And plus, the level of food, like you said, it was just tasting menu food. Everything was a lot prettier and more delicately plated. And then it went from working for Chef Jacob Williamson, who not necessarily an easy guy to work for, but at the end of the day, he's not crazy. um, but and then working for a guy like Robbie Nolan. Man, I love Chef Robbie to death. The guy taught me a lot and influenced me a lot. And I still talk to Robbie to this day. But man, it was just a complete shock for me going to work for, someone like Jacob, and then going to work for someone like Robbie, who has 3 years at the French Laundry and has, came up in that really old school French kitchen mentality, and, been pinned up against the past by Tim Hollingsworth, you know what I mean? So it just going to that style was just really shocking for me, but it definitely taught me a lot, and helped me to like organize myself and organize my station, and like really prepared me to take the next step, which was obviously moving to Chicago and joining Oyster, where I met you and a lot of other amazing chefs, man. And I think not having that time at Stephen Piles, I don't know if I would have been able to hang on at Royster like I did, because it's definitely a very different culture when you go from a more relaxed kitchen to a very like militaristic style brigade system.
Yeah. So is that where you met Evan?
Yeah, so I met Evan at Stephen Piles whenever I first got there. It was actually my first day, and they put me on fry. I have absolutely no training on fry. They had me stage for a lunch shift, so I don't like even have like the stage thing to like draw on, right? So I'm on fry. I look over at the saute guy. They're like, "Yeah, just ask him what you need to do." So he like starts telling me or whatever, and he's like, "Yeah, you need to make a kale puree." And I was like, "Okay, what do you have, a recipe?" And he's like, "Here's what you need to do," right? And he just told me what to do. So I go over and I do it, and I've got the kale and I've cleaned it and I've got it in the Vitamix, and I'm starting to stream oil in it. And Evan looks at me and he goes, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm making kale puree." I was like, I don't really, you know what I mean? It's like my second real job in the industry outside of my externship. I was like, I don't know, this is definitely the highest level I've ever cooked on. I was like, this is just what he told me to do. And he goes, "No, stop, throw that shit away." He's like, "Go to the walk-in, give me this, and this, clean the kale, do this, have it ready, then come get me and I'll show you how to make it." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, chef," right? And this is just like one of my fellow CDPs, right? So I go and I do all that. Evan comes up and he shows me how to do it. And he's like, "Boom, look, beautiful, green, tastes great. You're welcome." And I was like, "All right, cool." And I was like, I immediately was like, okay, that's somebody I need to like learn from and like pay attention to. And then that night, he needed a ride home or something. I was like, "Yeah, man, I got you on a ride, no problem." So on the way to drop him off at the house, he immediately like looks at me and he was like, "What kind of trouble you get into?" And it was like from that moment on, we were just like best friends. Like I gave him rides several nights throughout the rest of the week, and then that following week, he got promoted to sous chef at the restaurant, and we all went out to celebrate his promotion at a place called Fine China here in Dallas, and had this like really great meal. It just so happened that like the people that opened it were like everyone in the kitchen was somebody he had worked with at some point in his career or whatever, and they all came out and presented a new dish to us and did this tea ceremony thing. It was great. But yeah, pretty much from like that night on, Evan and I were pretty inseparable. We moved in together about 4 or 5 months later, got a place together, and then working at Stephen Piles and being, I guess, at what you would call like the pinnacle of the dining scene in Dallas, got us both thinking, because we're constantly, if you're not growing your dine and we want to keep moving forward. And by this point, Evan had become CVC of the restaurant, and we were just like, "Well, what's next?" And we saw that the Alinea Group was hiring in Chicago. And we're like, "Okay, well, that makes sense. Like, let's go to Michelin Dining." That's the logical next step for us to continue to progress in our careers. And that's what we did. We packed it up in May and moved up to Chicago and joined up with the Oyster team.
And how was that? How was the stage at Oyster compared to, Flora Street?
Oh man, so the stage at Oyster, and that's what I guess I like about the path I've taken. It's like every time I've made a move somewhere, it's been like a step to the next level. And so just seeing that, like walking in there and seeing the spice wall that had all those glass jars with all the labels perfectly, everything facing out the right way, full to the top, the way that everyone moved around the kitchen, just everything. It was just like, oh, it's like stepping that. The best way I can just describe it, if I can use a baseball reference, it's like you've been on a AA team and you've traveled and you're playing all these games and you're doing everything right, but then like you get called up to the majors and you step into like the Yankees locker room for the first time, and you're just kind of like, whoa. You know what I mean? It's that, okay, this is what it's like. And and something I'm learning now, having moved back to Dallas and taking a sous job here, it's really hard to like get away from that, like to not be in that environment where it's just like where everybody's on all the time, and the pressures of trying to like bring that to the next spot that you're in, right? Because that's your standard now. You don't know anything else, and so trying to bring that and share that with the new crew has its challenges, but I think at some level they all really appreciate it. Like they all want to know, what it takes to operate at that level.
Sometimes, and we've heard this, throughout the podcast, is like sometimes you don't know how good you have it in terms of, when you leave with standards, you're like, oh, that's standards. And then you walk into a different kitchen and it's, almost hard to start hacking things away because like you've built these habits that are in your brain, and like now you have OCD about towels and, labels, and
Right.
it doesn't go away. It doesn't get easier once you've seen the best,
Right now, okay, right, because now it's just making me crazy because I'm looking at it like, how are you working like that? Stop it. No, no. And now I feel like I'm, constantly like, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Stop it. No, stop. Don't slam that door. Don't slam that cooler. Stop slamming the oven. Like just little stuff like that. Don't tear your tape. Cut your tape right. Just the little things like that just stick with me that And yeah, it's really weird to step into a kitchen where like none of that stuff is really enforced, and then be put into a position of leadership, and where you come in and so trying to enforce all these things, but everyone who's not used to that, it looks at you and goes, "Dude, you're crazy. It's just a door." You know, and like, no, it's not. It's like, if I can't get you to not slam a door, how am I supposed to teach you how to cook something properly? Like, how am I supposed to teach you how to properly sear a piece of meat, or, get a crispy skin on a fish? Like, if you can't even not slam a door, how am I supposed to teach you how to do anything else?
Yeah, it's like Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. But and it's also about bringing back to our earlier point where it's about knowing why not to slam a cooler, why to put on labels, why to fold your towel. And it just once those things kind of click into order in the kitchen, it's really like going back like to the Chicago Bulls, right? They didn't start off as the best team in the league, but they took time and they perfected as a team and grew together and like set their standards higher and higher every year, and then they became unbeatable and untouchable. And that's kind of where our background is in the industry, is working for the top dogs who have this all in play and those standards enforced and everything like that. And we just mentioned this in a earlier podcast as well, but they're really institutions. They're really there to like teach you. It's like culinary school on steroids, and it's it's an everyday competition, not only with yourself but like with the entire team, of just just like things that Cam would do is like try to grab things faster than you, and those little things that made you better, and almost like a game incentive in it, that really made it fun. And I think the entire team we had was such a vibe at Oyster. What's your yeah? What's your going from Dallas nights out with the chefs to like Chicago nights out with the chefs, and like that team community? Did that kind of change? Was it better? Was it for worse?
No, man. I mean, I think we still have. I think that's something that's just like strong in the kitchen, is that like that bond, that camaraderie, because you guys know that like y'all are the ones in the trenches, cooking 190 chicken thighs next to the guy searing off, 95 chicken breasts, and you know what I mean. Like y'all are all there through it, and then we come out on the other side, and everybody's like, "Man, we crushed that," and this that. Like, I feel like that transfers through. Like I haven't really had a problem, coming back into Dallas. We just went 2 nights ago. We went and all grabbed late night Korean barbecue together, had some soju, and just had a good old time. So I think that camaraderie like transfers through a lot of kitchens. I think a lot of kitchens come together that way, because it's like a family. You see these people more than you see anyone else on the planet. Like, you're with them day in, day out, shoulder to shoulder, and so they do very much become your family. I think that's why we call it family meal, right? It's because something that allows us to sit down and eat together as a family, because we work together as a family, and I think naturally we tend to like to play together as a family.
No, what very well said. And then kind of getting into, after Royster, COVID kind of happening, how was that? What'd you do to stay positive? Like, what was the community like around you, and like what was their mindsets, and what were the moves that you made? What were the pivots?
Well, so I had seen myself, grow through my career to this point, and I really felt for the first time like I was ready to like take on that next level and get to that sous chef role. And so I actually accepted a sous chef position with the Boca Restaurant Group, which you're familiar with also, and started working for the Kennison there as their AM sous chef. It allowed me to get good at making pasta and cleaning fish, and all of that kind of like that next level, just past that CDP, where those are the things that you need to be doing. And repetition is the mother of all skills, so I got to do that a lot, on repeat, and really kind of develop and hone those skills. Albeit it was short-lived. So I started working there, and 3 weeks later I got my very first paycheck, and we were told that we were closing the doors because of coronavirus. So it was like, man, I just finally made this step, and was working for a really prestigious restaurant group, and things were looking up. I was finally making enough money to like really survive in Chicago, because we know I don't know how difficult that can be on a kitchen salary. It's not a cheap place to live, and everything's highly taxed, and it's just it costs a lot, so it was really nice. I was like, oh man, I'm finally going to be able to like enjoy myself and not have to struggle through, and going to get to learn something new and make that next step. And then coronavirus came in and took it all away, you know what I mean? And so I sat there on the couch for 2 months, just playing Call of Duty. I pretty much finished Netflix. I watched just about everything there was, and I was just going crazy. I just needed to be back in the kitchen. I was really just like itching to cook and work. And again, it's another like I must hate myself, right? Because I was making $800 a week in free money to sit at home and not do anything, and I went, no, I think I'll go to upstate New York and open a chicken restaurant and work 70 hours a week and make about $200 less. Sounds great. And so our buddies Winston and Anthony were out there and had the opportunity to open up this fried chicken joint. And Winston called me up 3 days after they opened and was like, I need help. Hurry up. We're busy. Get out here now. He was like, I got you. I'll put gas in your tank right now. And I was like, all right, man, I'll pack a bag. And so I shot on out to Binghamton, New York, and we did that. And that was really cool. It's called Bitchin' Fried Chicken. It was a really cool concept. We used kind of what we learned from Oyster and the Alinea group, and their knowledge in the fried chicken game, and then took what we learned there and kind of did our own thing with it. You know what I mean? We changed all the recipes and the flavors and everything, but still were able to provide this like beautiful, crispy, delicious chicken. So the product was great. Everybody in Binghamton, nobody like had ever had anything like that. They didn't know what to think about it. So it was a really cool, fun time. I got to spend the summer in upstate New York. It's beautiful up there, rolling green hills everywhere. The ladies in Binghamton are not terrible to look at either. So we definitely had a good time while we were there. But outside of that pop-up, once the pop-up was done, there really wasn't anything left for us there. It was just kind of it's a town that it's way outside of any like major metropolitan area, and so the food scene's kind of way in the past. They don't really have the ability to support any kind of like super high-end dining or really nice concepts. And so we just decided it was best for us to bounce out of there and leave. And that's when Evan and I split. Evan decided to go back to Chicago. He wanted to continue his journey with Oyster, and I decided it was time to come home, and at least for now, come down here. And I accepted a job offer with Gemma, who I'm with now. Non-biased opinion, something that was actually written the other day. We're probably one of the top 5 best restaurants in Dallas. It's really approachable, new American cuisine. It's just good food that we like to eat, that we like to cook, and we do our best to put that on a plate. And so I'm really happy where I'm at now. It's been a really fun ride trying to elevate this team, and I feel like we've come a really long way in the last 3 months that I've been there so far. So I'm just excited to see how we keep growing and how we can change this menu and continue to do stuff that's exciting and new and fun for the people of Dallas.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. What cuisine is it? And what's the vibe? And since your departure and arrival back in Dallas, would you say the restaurant scene has been growing, and how has COVID affected that growth?
So I think so Gemma's it's upscale casual. It's a new American cuisine, which I love that term because it basically gives us a license to do whatever we want. That's the great thing about American food, right? Is America is a melting pot of cultures, and it's people from all over the world who have settled here and are Americans. And so, in my opinion, and I think Ed Lee said it best. He said, fusion's a terrible term. He's like, if it's food that's being cooked in America, it's American food. So I don't care if it's Thai influenced or if it's a Chinese family, whatever. They're Americans and they're cooking American food. So I love that because it allows me the license and the freedom to express myself in different ways and not just kind of be pigeonholed into this like one style of cuisine or whatever. And just being able to really explore the different flavors and ingredients and cuisines across America that makes our food scene, I think, better than anywhere else in the world, is just because there's so many different meldings of cultures and different pockets, whether it's the Viet Cajun in Houston or Polish influences throughout South Texas. There's just like all these meldings of cultures that just make for really
Polish through
interesting, amazing
South
food.
Texas. That's a new one for me.
Yeah, man. All up along the coast, there's a lot of like German, Polish, Czech, all up along the south coast from like Victoria, pretty much all the way up to Houston. That whole area was settled by the uh, German, Polish, and the Czech.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Learn something new.
Yeah.
We have a listener tuning in on Twitch. I believe he's one of your line cooks. Turtles.
Oh, what's up, Zach?
Turtles FPS.
What's up, Zach?
He actually asked ask you who your favorite line cook is.
Oh man, my favorite line cook is the one who doesn't slam the door and labels all their tape correctly and is always ready for service. And that's my favorite line cook. So Zach, if that's not you, it can be.
He said it's Drew. Drew's a badass.
Now Drew is a badass. This is true. I guess it's like being a parent, right? You're not supposed to have favorites. They've all got their own qualities, right?
For
You're
sure.
allowed to love all of them.
Everybody has it. You give them different loves. Some people need tough love. Some people need, like a nice, gentle push. Some people need to be explained more or not. But that's the difficult role of a sous chef or a manager, a kitchen manager, whatever you want to call it, is to put the people in the right spot, right, and use their best skills. And everybody's journey is a little bit different. Everybody's experience is a little bit different. So everybody brings something different to the table, and that's what really makes a great team, is when you have that person that can fill in the roles where they need to be.
Right. It's aces in their places. I think it's the term for that, right? And it's just knowing, who's going to succeed the best at this one thing. That's not to say that they're not good at something else, but maybe they're just a little bit better at this one thing. And so that's who you want to have doing that. That's your best guy in that role, and that's what they need to do in order for the restaurant to succeed and to work in harmony and in unison. You know what I mean? You gotta, if and that's not just to our employees, that's to ourselves too. That's being able to check yourself and know that, hey, if I'm not a good expo, but my other chef is a good expo, well, maybe he should run the expo and I should run a tournant position and just like float up and down the line. It's being able to check yourself on those things and recognize that, and then put yourself in the right place, as opposed to the place that maybe you just want to be, right? So,
well, I guess you get that from the Sunday night footballs that you watch and how the coaches play their teams and whatnot. I know you're really into, sports.
That's right. Go Cowboys.
There you go, repping that. So now we're getting into the fun part. So I like to ask all my podcasteers and everybody, all the guest chefs on the show, what kitchen and what dish had so many components and took so much time to prep that anybody had it on their station would just not be excited about that task. And it just really became a task more than anything else. But the dish came out beautiful, obviously tasted amazing. But I know all of us have been in a kitchen where there's just like an obnoxious amount of prep for this dish and an obnoxious amount of time for the pickup as well. So I'm always interested to hear and see if you have a dish like that.
I wouldn't say one of my dishes personally, but I'll tell you, and Evan will attest to this, the ceviche station at Stephen Piles at Flora Street Cafe. That station was a beast because it was like 4 or 5 different ceviches, and all of them had like 18, 19 molecular components. Like, so whenever you're having to do all the prep for all those things, and they've all got to be, immaculate and perfect and on point every time. Like, just that station, more than any, one specific dish, that station, from a prepping standpoint, was definitely the most intense station I've ever seen. I never had to work it when it was like that. When I finally took my turn on the ceviche station, we were down to like 2 ceviches, and then a couple of salads, and so it wasn't nearly as like intricate and complicated. But when I first got there, that was the station Evan was on, and that thing was a beast. It was just, yeah, wild to see the amount of like crazy molecular prep. Like, you're having to make coconut noodles in liquid nitrogen, and you're having to make all these different kinds of snows and ices and foams and gelées, and setting stuff with agar. And it was like really like the most molecularly driven station in the restaurant for sure. And so there was just a lot of prep to get ready for that one.
No, that's awesome, and I bet that was probably a killer station. I could only imagine the amount of tedious prep there is, especially for kudos where it's all has to be cutesy and super refined.
Right, intricate knife work, all that kind. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what are you doing? So you're at Gemma now. How's that? Kind of tell me, like, how's that vibe? You settled in now. Everything's kind of picking up. What's the restaurant scene? Are people going more out? And, are things picking up, right? We have a lot of people in the trenches that are finally starting to open back up, whether it's indoor, outdoor, and kind of get the ball rolling in terms of like the fine dining aspect and getting out of those, to-go boxes.
Right. Well, so the restaurant's definitely picking up. When I got there back in December, there were, weekdays where we'd only have 8 covers on the books, and we wind up feeding, 25, 30 people. But now our weekdays, we've got 30 on the books, minimum. We did 90 covers on a Thursday, which is, huge for us. We're finally starting to break that. We're flirting with breaking that $10,000 sales on the weekends. And for a restaurant that is still, regardless of the restrictions that were lifted by Governor Abbott here in Texas, the restaurant's still operating as though all those restrictions are in place. So they did not choose to expand to 100% occupancy right away. We're all still wearing our masks in the kitchen. So we're still following all of those rules, but we are seeing an increase in our sales and our reservations. And so we're becoming a lot fuller and fuller. So there's definitely an increase of people going out. I think I think some of it might have to do with them. The governor said, "Oh, it's fine, go out at 100%, whatever," right? But I think it has more to do with there's now a vaccine available. I think I saw somewhere that 1 in 8 people who want the vaccine already have it. And so it's just as we start moving forward and starting to quote unquote get back to some sense of normalcy. I think people are just becoming more comfortable, now that they've got their vaccine and they know other people are doing that, that people are really starting to come out more. And it doesn't hurt that the weather's been absolutely beautiful here in Texas. It's March. Springtime's always my favorite because it just doesn't rain very often. Big, bright blue skies and, 75-degree weather. It's pretty nice.
Your line cook saying Texas politicians trying to kill us. Which,
yeah,
it's awesome. I'm having a blast. I really am glad that we had you on the pod and we got to like learn all about your background and stuff like that. I learned a couple new things that usually don't come up in conversation, and that's really cool. In terms of where do you see, the restaurant scene kind of heading in the next 5 years?
Well, so I think there's one thing about this pandemic that where the restaurant industry will forever be changed is that we can't get rid of to-goes now. That's never going away. Like, I hope everyone just realizes that this is now just a thing we have to do. Because in high-end restaurants, at Stephen Piles, at Oyster, even at Wolfgang, we never had a to-go order. There may be somebody who's dining in that's like, oh, I want to get this to go to take to whatever, and you box it up for them or whatever. But you didn't have to deal with 125 covers plus another 50 to go covers, on a nightly basis. And the way that stuff works, it's always coming in all at the same time. It's when you're busiest in the restaurants, when your to goes are the busiest too. So I think the next spot, and I think the guys with the Alinea group, have a pretty good beat on this. I think the pivot is going to be to diversify and branch off your business so that you can still have your nice fine dining or upscale casual restaurant type place where you can really focus on the guests who are in house and pay attention to that. But then also branching off and having like a separate quote unquote to go kitchen or to go division where you have cooks who are more along the line of catering versus line cook style, and they're able to put together these packages that can be picked up or in the case of the Alinea group, sent anywhere in the world. I think those guys are always innovating and they're always coming up with crazy new ways. I'm like, okay, cool, this is the challenge in front of us, how do we get around it? Which I think as chefs, is a lot of what our job is problem solving. It's being able to identify a problem, but then not just go, oh hey, there's a problem, but being able to go, hey, there's a problem, you should probably not do that so that we don't have that problem. You know what I mean? And like being able to problem solve and correct it and move forward. And so they've, like I said, those guys have done an incredible job of being able to problem solve and figure out, okay, well, how do we keep moving forward and make our food more available than it's ever been to the masses? So good for them.
Yeah, no, that's I think you're definitely right there, and to goes are not going away. If not, they're you have to split that. I definitely see that, and I think that would be the best move for a lot of companies, especially that already built that clientele, right? There's a clientele for fine dining, there's a clientele for to-goes, and they're a little bit separate, and they're going to stay separate. I think people that enjoy getting to-goes, especially from nice places, are not, maybe they're introverts or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So it's a market has been created. There's now a market for to-go food at this level. I think it's just going to be our job as chefs to figure out how do we execute that to the level and not only the standard and the level that we want to put out, but also to the volume that's going to increase and the workload that's going to increase on your kitchen. And how do you separate that out? And does it all come off your line? And if it does, how do you handle those challenges that it brings? Where you've got 16 tickets on the rail, and you've also got 8 to goes that are all need to be walking out right now. How do you deal with that? And so I think it'll be a fun thing to watch it problem solve and watch. I'm sure there'll be several, business models and whatever that come out that show how you pivot that away from your actual fine dining restaurant and into a kind of a beast of its own.
Yeah. Have you seen that my fave chef cooking competitions, and do you have any opinions about that?
So I saw it come up. I saw something about feature in Bon Appetit magazine, and then I also saw something later where Bon Appetit came out and they said, "Hey, those guys aren't like in any way affiliated with us. They just bought some ad space, and I guess you were going to get your picture on that page." And so that was my only kind of opinion of it, was that it seemed a little shady the way they went about it. Like, oh, you're going to get a feature in Bon Appetit magazine. They were like, well, wait a minute, no, you're not. So
yeah, I've gotten many texts and calls asking about that, if it's like a scam or whatnot, but it seems legit. On the other side, it's just like they did buy an ad space and they're piggybacking off of all of these smaller chefs and kind of taking advantage, because you can donate and get like double points and kind of buy your win in essence.
Right.
So I just wanted to see if you had any opinions or you've seen that around. So
yeah, no, like I said, that's pretty much all I've heard about it. I know a few people that were competing in it, and, but I didn't really ever pay that much attention to it, other than, like I said, what I had seen outside of it, where Bon Appetit had come out and said, no, we don't have anything to do with that contest. So that just seemed kind of shady. So
Yeah, and if you can give us, a couple words of advice in terms of how should chefs approach R&D, and what are some of the resources that you find are amazing to use?
so as far as R&D goes, I guess the basic and most important part of R&D is inspiration, right? Like you gotta being inspired is hard sometimes if you don't, know the right places to look or figure things out like that. So I try to draw inspiration from, everyday things or things I see, whether it's, art or, music, a song I hear, or whatever it may be. I try to find inspiration in those things. And then, sometimes inspiration comes from mistakes. Sometimes you mess something up and you're like, okay, well, that's not what I meant to do, but this is what it made. So like, what can we do with that? Like, how can we expand on that and, explore that and see what we can come. I mean, one day I just, when I first started at Gemma, I wasn't really 100% sure of how, how many herbs they were going through or whatever. So like I ordered 2 pounds of basil and 2 pounds of cilantro and 2 pounds of mint. And then we got all these herbs in, and the chef was like, "Oh, that's way too many herbs. So we only need to order like a pound at a time." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, we don't want them to go bad, so like, let's make a dish." So it was like we had all these extra herbs, and so we're like, "Cool, we'll do Trinity herbs." And then chef was like, "Yeah, man, we'll poach some shrimp and some coconut handashi." And I was like, "Oh man, I got that basil oil, and that I said we can make basil oil and a bunch of the basil." I said, "I've already got some chili oil, so we can do that with it." And why don't come out of this is like really tasty dish that's on the menu now? So inspiration can come from a lot of places. We like just looking for it and paying attention to it. As far as like references and like how to go about it, like I said, that these things are invaluable. Young cooks, if you don't have books, get books. They can inspire you in ways you never imagined. Like you just see things and you're like, oh man, I never thought to put like those flavors together. Or I've never seen that technique before. That's cool. I'm gonna try to learn how to do that technique so I can put my flavors on it. They're definitely invaluable. And like I said, that the 11 Madison Park, man, that index is invaluable whenever you're trying to R&D, because like I said, it's got all the ratios for all the sauces, for all the gels, for all the foams, anything you're trying to do, especially on a molecular level, they've got exactly how to do it back there. And then you can just start grifting on it and turn it into your very own.
Yeah, no, that's definitely words of wisdom there coming from Chef Mike. Mike, is there any questions that I didn't ask that I should have asked?
I don't know, man. I don't know what to expect. I just kind of wanted to come on here. I see what you guys have been doing. You and I used to shoot videos in my living or in my kitchen in my apartment in Chicago, and so
Yeah,
I'm
we
always
did.
keeping
We,
up with
we
you
had
what
a
you're doing, and
That was fun, man. You
right.
guys, you guys really bring the kitchen to every place you guys move into. You guys have all the cool stuff that every chef kind of. You have an amazing arsenal. Let's put it that way. You
Right,
got
man. I like.
all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, we like to be able to do pretty much anything we can do at work at home, and so like outside of like high compression vacuum sealing, we've amassed enough things to do all of those things. So it's really nice to have that at home and like not have to worry about, oh man, I wish I had a Shinwa. No, because I have one. I wish I had a Vitamix. Oh no, because I have one. So I can literally do all the things that I do at work and all the techniques and apply them to my cooking at home. So whether I'm cooking for friends or family or a girl or doing a pop-up dinner or whatever it may be, I can pull out all the stops and really do things the right way.
Yeah, I was really inspired and had a lot of fun when you brought all the chefs together in Chicago, and we had an awesome cookout. And you guys did all the cooking, but it was like what 13, 14 courses of just delicacies, and from pig's heads to some really cool things that I wouldn't even have thought of, which is always really cool to be have that very creative open mind set. And I think that what you brought and those memories we created in that day were really cool.
Yeah, man, that's our favorite thing to do. Like one of my favorite things in the whole wide world is to just get in the kitchen with my friends and just kind of start freestyling. I'll go to the grocery store together, just get inspired at the store. Like, oh man, look at that pig's head. Oh, hey, let's do this. This got tails and hocks, and okay, cool. I'm making kimchi ramen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just coming up with, different things like that. And then the time in the kitchen was just music playing, hanging out, laughing with your buddies and cooking good food, and then having all your closest friends show up to, enjoy it and eat it. And like, to me, that's just, one of the best places to be.
Yeah, it's definitely a euphoric environment.
Yeah, man, we just recently did one a couple weekends ago at my buddy Jake's house, one of my line cooks. We were out there, it was Drew's birthday, and so we decided to do it big. We did 30-pound crawfish boil, smoked a prime rib, we smoked a duck, we smoked 2 pork butts. I made kimchi collard greens. We made spicy cucumber salad. It was a good time, great feast. Those boys killed it. I was really proud of my 2 line cooks that day. They were in charge of the prime rib and the duck, and they killed it. It was a really good meal.
That sounds like a party that I missed out on. That sounds amazing.
A party,
you know
a party
how to
would
put
be a
on a
great
spread.
term for it. Yeah, we definitely know how to throw a party too.
So, Chef Mike, as we wrap this up, we have a question that we always ask at the end. Do you remember where this stumbled in your life, and do you have any stories about it? But the question is, why 86? Where did it originate from? And do you have any stories about it that, you kind of heard out throughout your culinary experience?
Man, so I've heard several different stories. I guess it really is like a urban legend. Like, how did 86 get started? But I think the first one I heard, like I said, I started at Denny's. That was my waiting job, and so urban legend was that 86 came from old greasy spoon diners on the side of the road, like truck stop diners, and the truckers would use their CB radios to communicate. And 86 meant to be out of or to get off of or whatever, and so the waitresses started picking up the term 86 for meaning, oh, hey, we're out of something, from the truck drivers. But then I've also heard several other stories about it. It just depends on who you ask, and the story they heard. I guess that's why it's such an interesting question, because nobody really knows. It's one of those urban legends.
Right. We've had many different views of point and stories about it. So it does seem to live and exist in the culinary world, and it's just something that just comes into your life and it never leaves, right? But
Right.
we all use it, from chefs from Canada to Sweden, and all across America to who we've talked to. It's always there, and everybody's got a story or how it stumbled up. So like, how it came into your life in Denny's, and you heard the origins of that, and it could definitely sound, they all sound logical. It makes sense, right?
Right.
So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, man, it's terminology and slang or whatever. It's weird, like when you try to like get into like the etymology and the actual like where those things come from, because it's all, for the most part, been told word of mouth. It's just like something that, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you were to ask, like, where did crunk come from? When did you start using the word crunk? You know what I mean? It's not cool to say that word anymore, but there was a time, a decade ago, everybody was saying crunk. But
Yeah.
like, what does that mean? Where did it come from? Nobody knows. But like, it's one of those things, you're exposed to it, you accept it, and you just don't question it.
It makes sense, right? Like,
It makes sense if you really don't think about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for coming on the pod. If you could share
Chef,
with
thanks for having me.
all our viewers and everybody tuning in where they can find all your amazing content.
Cool, guys. So y'all can find me on Instagram at Chef Mike Stites. That's pretty much where I keep all my food. You can follow my food travels on there with my story, things we're doing in the restaurant, cookouts we have, travels going up to Chicago. Follow me on there, all my food journeys.
Yeah, guys,
One more
everybody
time,
make sure to check
I'm
out
gonna say one more
Chef,
time, that's at Chef Mike Stites. Yeah, there you
at
go.
Chef Mike Stites. Make sure to give him a follow, like, and leave a thoughtful comment. As always, thank you so much for tuning in to another amazing episode of Late Night with Chefs. everybody have a safe evening and have a good night.